Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Microsoft 365 Business Boost show. I am Therman Trotman, one half of your host. I'm here with my guy, Nick DeCourcy. Nick, what's going on?
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Nick, this week I want to talk about something we chatted about, certifications.
Okay.
Not a new topic in the world of IT, because for a long time there's been a debate amongst folks of whether or not certifications are I wouldn't say valuable. I don't think the argument is valuable. I think the discussion is, are they necessary? And you had some thoughts you want to add to the discussion, or maybe you want to have an argument. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what your position is, so maybe we can have an argument about it. Who knows?
Maybe.
I know there are some people who are quite militant on this issue, so maybe.
Yeah.
I know there are some people who are vehemently opposed to the idea of certifications and taking them, but that's not me. I do hold some active ones.
Yeah, and I was gonna say let's hear it. What's your position on certifications and working with clients and having those under your belt and what they mean to you and stuff like that? So where are you at on this? What side of the aisle are you on?
Yeah, I think this is fresh in my mind because this week I renewed my Power Platform Functional Consultant cert, which is one of the ones that I hold active and renew each year. And I was thinking about this in the context of some of the work that I'm doing with different vendors and contractors who are working on projects with me. And I always think that it's an interesting debate that is had about certs, in that the debate kind of comes from the perspective of, well, certs don't really on their own allow you to go over a bar of quality. They don't let you go over that hurdle. They don't really say that you know exactly what you're doing in the thing that it is that you've got that cert in. And I think we could probably all agree to that actually there's a lot more that goes into experience and knowledge than just having passed an exam and getting that cert. But thinking specifically about the way that Microsoft does the renewals of these, and if you've not done one of these recently, then the way that it does it is you do the exam, and so long as that exam continues being a thing with Microsoft, each year you're asked to renew it. And you don't have to go back in and do the same formality of exam that you did before, but you do a test, and that test is judged against the whole kind of world of topics that you might have under that particular cert, but they specifically give you some learning content to look through before you take the renewal exam. And that's stuff that may have changed or updated since the last time you did it. I'm not sure how often that gets updated, that package changes, but certainly there are changes each year. And so thinking about that, maybe a cert doesn't give you that like hurdle over the bar of quality, but it does allow you to make sure that you're not slipping under this place where you don't know about the things that you don't know. It's very easy when you're doing the same thing all the time, but there are so many changes that are coming out from Microsoft every day, and we see this, the amount of news that comes out just about things like Copilot and new features and so on and so forth, and that's happening right across the board with the things that we're not actively looking at as well. And so if you don't follow all of that, where are you necessarily going to start knowing about some of those changes, about new standards, about new best practices? Like, sure, if you're working in it every day, then you'll find out about that stuff, probably. But there's useful things that are to do with the Microsoft ecosystem that maybe you're not going to find out unless you go through that process of someone holding your feet to the fire and saying each year you need to read some content in order to find out about X. So from that point of view, I think it's probably very helpful. And it's such a straightforward process once you've got the cert to do that renewal every year, that I do think the fact that you're renewing it and keeping it up to date says something about the breadth of information that you will have consumed that's relevant to the certification that you've got.
Okay. So I I see where you're coming from. Let me say that. I don't know that when you pass the certification, that what you said is true, though, because of what the literal process is that you're doing. Like, what the literal process is that you're doing is that you're passing you're answering questions correctly on a test and then getting the certification. That's the literal process of what you're doing. But what that means to you and what that means to somebody else and what that means to another service provider, it could be different things. What you just explained is how it translates to you. Somebody else, it might be, look, I crammed, did it, and moved on. I don't remember what I even answered on this thing. Somebody else is, it takes too long. 3 years is too long for me to remember and think that I'm renewing. If it was up to me, I'd renew every 6 months, something like that. I don't know. So maybe this renewal thing doesn't apply to this other service provider. There are some people who cheat, you know what I'm saying, who figure out a way how to cheat on these tests. And so there's that too on these certs. Then there are people who can take these certs and know them inside out, but don't apply or know how to apply it to real life. So that's why I said I'm partly with you, because what you're saying makes sense to you and a bunch of other people who that applies to. But then we have all of these lanes of people taking these certs who the value is something different to them, or the outcome is something different to them. And now I may sound like I'm defending some other side, probably because I'm one of them people. So I am the type of person who will watch a movie on Monday. And if you try to ask me about this movie on Thursday, I'll be like, what? You're like, what part? What are you even talking about right now? I don't remember that scene in the movie. This is bad, you know what I'm saying, for me, because I don't like having a bad memory. It's hard for me to access, my pieces of my memory. When I take a test, that is really difficult for me to remember those things after I've taken a test. It's almost like I got it in my brain to take the test, and now the test is over, it leaves my brain. And I remember things by repetition, doing it on a regular basis. So right now, today, for the last 15 years plus, almost each and every single day of my life, I've been in and touched and used SharePoint in some capacity every single day. I'm a SharePoint junkie, if you will. So if I was given some test to test my SharePoint knowledge, maybe some SharePoint trivia, I think I could pass it. But as soon as my mind shifts into, you need to now take a test to prove that you know about SharePoint via a certification, and we're going to throw in a bunch of extra stuff in there too that don't have anything to do with SharePoint, well, kind of SharePoint adjacent. I start sweating bullets. You know what I mean? I start blanking out. Taking tests is a difficult thing for me. But to serve a client with this tool, SharePoint, and to stay up to date on what's going on with SharePoint, I find that very easy to do without certifications. So that is the side of that's where I'm at when it comes to these certifications. But I really like your thought process of, like, it won't ascend you, but it'll set a bar that we won't slip below. You know what I mean? So I really like that thought process. But again, I don't know if that applies to everybody. Maybe, if we think about a different industry, nursing. In order to be a nurse, you have to have a nurse's license. What is it like for a nurse compared to other nurses across their state administering care for a certain type of client? Are they all set? Are they all set at a certain bar because they all took the test, or does what I say apply? Like, there's a whole bunch of different outcomes for these folks, or does taking or being a certified nurse really mean you highly likely know these things? I don't know. I think I gotta think about that one.
I think that the interesting part of it is that it probably depends on what the services you're offering. Like, if the service that you're offering is very, very tightly aligned with the thing that you're touching all the time, then probably there isn't such a risk that comes from those unknown unknowns. I think that's what we're talking about. You know, what the cert might
Well,
give you.
wait? What do you mean? Do you mean like maybe like an HVAC certification that the service you provide is pretty much going to be the same across the board when it comes to HVAC?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's an aspect of, if you've got an HVAC certification, your job is that you're touching actual rooftop AC units all the time, but you have enough knowledge in that to understand, different types of, like an on-wall like mini split unit and so on and so forth. So you're able to talk to that. That might not be your expertise. But if push comes to shove and someone's talking to you about that type of system, you have enough knowledge that you know whether what you're hearing makes sense or not, right? And I think that's the case with Microsoft 365. There's a lot going on in Microsoft 365. And do you have the basics of things like how the authentication authorization works across Microsoft 365? Like what proves that ability, that knowledge, and if something changes there, how do you get up to speed with it? Now, one of the ways that you would get up to speed with it is if you've got a cert in that area, then your recertification is going to help you with that. It's going to make sure that even if you are kind of head down in one particular aspect of it all the time, that when it comes to that renewal, that you're at least looking at the content that's around that. And I think that's probably important, in the same way that when we go to renew our driver's license, we don't have to do a full test. We don't go out in the car again, but we do have to certify that we can see right. Like we do an eye test again when we go and get our driver's license, because there are certain things. Your ability to turn a steering wheel probably isn't going to change that much year to year, but the thing that is going to change is your ability to see year to year or decade to decade. So that's the relevant thing to recertify. And I think the same is probably true with Microsoft 365. I've personally, in the last few weeks, run into situations where, on projects that I've been involved in, I've been talking with people working on those projects and talking about certain security foundations that exist in areas like Power Platform. There just hasn't been an understanding of that. Not from the point of view of I don't know how to set it up or I don't know how to use it, but just from the point of view of I don't know that it exists. And that but baseline foundational things, being a complete unknown, is always going to be a danger. If you didn't know that there was the ability to, change permissions on sites in SharePoint, then it wouldn't be possible for you to do your job without being dangerous. And if that was changed one day, with the changes that are happening, like the hero link and so on and so forth, these big changes that are happening with how we share files and what those file shares look like, that's something that you're going to have to get up to speed on. And I know you will get up to speed on it, but there might be other people who are doing a similar job to you that aren't interested in getting up to speed with that. And over time, they might become a little dangerous to their clients because they're not working with current information.
Yeah. That's a good point, because, as you know, we talk about AI on this show, and sometime last year, I believe you asked me the question, did I have a co-pilot? I think it's important as SharePoint SMEs that we get smart on Copilot, because the time will come when we need to support our client with that. It's like inevitable, right? But my thought process is that I learn how to do it. Like, I learn how to be effective with it, as opposed to going the cert route. But so what you're saying has me thinking this, right? It's like I don't know how to explain it. I got to find the correct analogy, but every every car owner or every driver has a driver's license, but every I can't think of it. I'm throwing this off really bad. It's this analogy, right? It's this thing I'm trying to think of where everybody who has a cert isn't X, but everybody who doesn't have a cert is Y. It's like something like that. Something where like it's better you do than you don't type thing. Where it would be like, let's say they have a co-pilot for SharePoint certification. If you want to administer Copilot agents and Microsoft 365 Copilot or whatever the terminology will be in the future for our Microsoft customers, this is the certification you would need to at least lay the foundation and say you can do this. I think that's a great thing to have. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I'd be running out of my seat to go do that, but to your point, I think it's one of them things. It's like it's better if you do than you don't. So if I have to, spin myself up and get all crazy and say, hey, at least I have it. And now when I go talk to a client, I can say I have it. But again, that's why I was trying to find that analogy, because there are a lot of times when, like, you go and get your car worked on and you don't necessarily check the credentials of the mechanic. If you go to something like a Pet Boys, they might have some certifications on the wall that prove all of their mechanics know a certain thing. So you're not driving down the highway and your wheel comes off. But you highly likely, due to price or convenience, would go to a mechanic who might not have that on their wall, but that they can do the job because other customers have told you, I've used this person for years. They're great. You know what I mean? Not asking for a cert. So I wish I could remember the analogy I'm trying to form in my head.
I think the thing is that it's one, if you're a customer, it's one metric that you can use. It shouldn't be the metric that you use to make a decision. If you're someone with a lot of certs, but you seem unreliable and untrustworthy, then you might be one of those people that cheated to get it. Like, you shouldn't ignore that instinct of, well, this person doesn't seem reliable or trustworthy, but they've got these certifications, so I'm going to go with them. That doesn't make any sense at all. So it's one metric that you can use. But I think if you're dealing with things that are complicated, then it's a metric that can be important to make sure that the right things have been thought about in that complication. If you're dealing with a complicated project, is everyone speaking the same language? The language of the Microsoft ecosystem is something that you have to learn. And while we can complain about the fact that it's not as integrated an ecosystem as we might like it to be in some places, I mean, it is a fairly well integrated ecosystem where people with different types of skills within that ecosystem can work together to be successful for a particular customer using the products. But in order for that to be as streamlined as it can be, then we probably all need to be talking the same language about those products, with the same baseline understanding as to how they work and what the standards are that we're going to use. And to some extent, certifications can help us to make sure that we are speaking that common language. Like, if you look at the basic level, the foundation courses that Microsoft has. Now, you don't have to renew those. You can do AZ 900 once, and then you never have to renew it again. So they're a little bit different than the associate and the expert courses. But what they do give you, like, they don't give you a lot of in-depth technical knowledge, but what they do give you is a picture. They kind of map out what's there so that when someone's talking, if you've done the PL 900, for example, the Power Platform one, and someone starts talking about Canvas apps versus model-driven apps, or Dataverse, or Power Automate, you've at least got a picture of what they're talking about, and you can talk that common language. Can you go into the depths of it? No, certainly not. But sometimes you just need that basic understanding to start you on that journey of knowing what's going on, to have that relevant conversation. I think it can do that. So do you need them? Absolutely not. But can they be an important metric that you use, a measure as to someone's overall ability to kind of slot in? I think so, but it shouldn't be used to a greater degree that it's valuable, like so many things.
Yeah. Like somebody trying to sell you something and they got a nice outfit on, like a nice suit or something.
Yeah.
So you have a nice suit on, but you're not gonna make the purchase based on the suit. The suit helps. You know what I mean? The suit looks good. The suit makes the person approachable. Makes you probably listen to them. Make you think that they take what they're saying seriously, but doesn't necessarily tell the whole picture, because they could be very good at picking a nice suit and have no idea what the hell they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? So, it's part of the thing that you use to make a good decision. I agree. But I tell you what, personal history. I have even in the past fought hard against clients who was saying, like, they weren't even, so it was the government. I'll say it was the government. Government organizations from the top down would say things like, before you have your folks working on SharePoint, being a SharePoint developer, they need to take these certs. And I would say, look, I totally get where you're coming from, but this doesn't make any sense. What you're asking for, maybe you could make it a part of a package or something of certs. I don't know, but you need to pick a different cert, because this doesn't get you good service. Like, why are you requesting this one? It's like, y'all don't know what you're talking about. And now, lo and behold, not only do I personally feel like I was right, but they turned SharePoint into a end users tool. So the same SharePoint that I used to work on as an admin, and they used to say that I needed certain certs for, every person in the world who uses a Microsoft tool, just like how they use Excel, PowerPoint, and Word, they can now use SharePoint. That's where we are. If that was the case, they wouldn't have did that. Like, Microsoft is not going to turn over what is it? What it is, like something on a server or something. I can't think of nothing right now, but not to be an end user's tool. Now, you did talk about Power Platform and Power Apps as an end user's tool, so maybe I might be wrong. But Power Apps, if you are going for a certification in Power Apps, you, to me, might be using that to support a customer way more than like someone inside of an organization is, going to build a app or something. I don't know, but I didn't see the purpose of what. I wish I could remember what cert they were telling me to get. I didn't see the purpose. I didn't see the connection of it, and now I don't even know if it's required anymore. I have no idea. It was a long time ago, but this cert discussion, I really, I think it's very clear where I stand, which is like, look, here's my approach. My approach is, you will hire me or you won't hire me. If you don't hire me because I don't have a cert, no big deal. I don't think that's a big deal. That is your choice to say, I feel more comfortable with somebody who has a certification. Totally fine. And if you do hire me and I don't have a certification, obviously I'd be very much appreciative, but no one asks me for certs. Not anymore. You know what I'm saying? Not since.
No one has ever asked me about
doing this
certifications. So far as I can recall, it's never come up in a conversation, because the customers that I'm working with generally don't have an awareness of those programs existing. So it's entirely a self-imposed standard to say that I'm going to maintain. In fact, I dropped one last month. I have held a QuickBooks cert, and I dropped it. I didn't see the relevance, and I don't. I have done work on QuickBooks products previously, but I am not having much fun with personally using QuickBooks, and I haven't in the last year or two. So I don't see the relevance. I'm not going to be recommending it to people. I'm not actively going to be seeking work around QuickBooks. But as a process, again, of going through and having to do that renewal and seeing what's changed, I really think that I think about it, and we've talked about this before. Of why do I do things like write on LinkedIn or make videos and so on and so forth? And one of the primary reasons is it gives you a good reason to keep learning. If you're going to go out and you're going to talk about product X, or you're going to talk about a new feature or something like that, you don't want to look like an idiot, if you can avoid it. So you're going to go out and you're going to try to work out how on earth does this thing actually work before you go and talk about it, right? And I see particularly the renewal of the certifications as part of that. The downside of not doing it is very, very small until it comes down to, well, you look like an idiot because you haven't kept yourself up to date. Right. So
Right.
it's another thing that's in the background that's saying, well, you need to go back and you need to read that stuff about what's been changed with model driven apps or Power Pages or things that maybe I've taken my eye off the ball with over the course of the last year, focusing on things like Copilot. And it says if you want to maintain the certification, it's just a little thing there. Then you have to go in and read some of this stuff. You have to know about it, because you shouldn't just take that renewal test because you haven't touched these things in a year. So you might not know it, So I think from that point of view, it's helpful. And I know that your experience, Therman, you've had certs before, back in the days of you turned up to an actual centre and taken an exam, and then when you wanted to renew it, you've gone back to a centre and you've taken an exam. I would probably be less pro it if it was that hardcore at this point. Now the renewal is just every year you read a few articles and you take a test that takes 45 minutes on your computer screen. There's no proctor. It's a less intense process than the one that you were describing.
Yeah, but see, now I think that there's value in having that intense process, having a proctor, having to physically go somewhere and be watched. Because to your point about like the customers are not asking us about certs because they might not know that these programs exist, right? One thing we do know is that, again, back to the medical industry, nurses have licenses. They have to be licensed to work in the state. Same thing for a doctor. Like, these folks we know should have something, because if you found out that they didn't, you probably would be like, I'm not going there. You know what I mean? Because how are you a doctor but you don't have a degree and you don't have a license to practice? Like, you'd be worried about that. So they have to, actually, I would be surprised if the process for getting those, the doctor's license or the nurse license, was now something virtual. I would be like, dang, why would they take away the difficulty of it, the difficulty of getting to the center, somebody's watching you, the cost, obviously, and it's timed, and we're asking real questions. Matter of fact, the PMP certification. PMP is also pretty strenuous, but that's another one that you don't necessarily need to. Nobody's running around saying, hey, in order to be managing my projects, I need you to be a PMP. I need you to have the PMP cert. They're not saying that, but the PMP cert still, I think, has a high, it's not value. It's prestigious, if you will, sort of, because people know that process is a lot. You know what I'm saying? To you hear people go through getting a PMP, and you're like, dang, they went through a lot to do that, because it's strenuous. Or like writing a book. Everybody knows that writing a book is like super difficult. So I like adding the difficulty or keeping the difficulty, especially with everything being digital and technical and all that these days.
I mean, if it was regulated, I do think there's an argument to say that if a hairdresser needs a license, like a hairdresser needs to be licensed by their state, like, and the impact of being a bad hairdresser is someone gets a bad haircut, right? Like, that's the impact.
Very important, Nick.
Whereas the well, you can see from my hair, I take a great deal of care with that. This is not the result of an unlicensed hairdresser. That's all I can say. If you think of it from that point of view, then the impact of going and screwing up someone's Enter ID, or giving them the wrong advice when it comes to security software in their environment, or licensing or something like that, is significantly higher than the likely output of being an unlicensed hairdresser, right? So isn't it a bit strange in our world that we have these kind of archaic standards about who should hold a license to do what they do and who shouldn't hold a license to do what they do, whereas the actual importance of the various things that people are touching have kind of come out of balance over the course of the last 100 years, 50 years, whatever you want to say. And it's just a historical quirk that anyone can set themselves up as like an expert in Microsoft Teams. And if to some extent, if they wear a nice suit and they talk right about it, then they get a job doing that. Whereas if you cut people's hair, you have to have hundreds of hours of experience of doing it that the state certifies before you're allowed to set yourself up in business. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Although, Nick, if you get a bad haircut, you know what I mean, it could be bad, you know what I'm saying, for about 3 or 4 days until everything starts to straighten back out. It could be very rough. So I don't know, you know what I mean? If you set up the permissions incorrectly on a server and you have a data breach versus a bad haircut, it might be on the same level. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? If we ask certain people. But Nick, really good discussion. This is a really good discussion. I like this. I don't think it's the end of it, but it is the end of this episode. And before we get out of here, I would like to ask you to tell all these beautiful folks, where can they find you and what do you have on the docket? Is it the docket? Where can they find you? And what do you have coming up?
Find me on LinkedIn.
Nice.
So see what I'm posting there. Or you're on YouTube right now, so you can see me there as well. And I guess if you're studying for a cert, well, I do have some videos that might be helpful, but that's not really my thing. There are better people that have content out there that's like, if you want to learn PL 900, then go watch my video. So go watch their video instead. Come to me once you've done it and find out how to actually use some of these things.
Nice. Yeah. I would agree. When you go get your cert done, then talk to somebody. So your cert's married with someone who has real life experience supporting businesses and all that. That's a great conversation. Reach out to those folks. Nick obviously has invited you. You can come talk to me if you'd like. I think I'm very good actually at applying what I learned to organizations and businesses, because that's why I exist. I'm like a vessel, Nick. I'm a vessel for Microsoft. They just produce their stuff, and then I just use me to support these organizations.
A vessel for Microsoft with a very good licensed haircut.
Right, exactly. Listen, before I get out of here, I'm on LinkedIn too. However, I know I've said in the past I'm on LinkedIn every single day, and if you don't see me, I'm dead. I've actually missed a few days. I've been on vacation. I've actually removed the app off of my phone there, Nick. I was becoming a bit of a LinkedIn junkie, but I'm still on there at least every other day, answering DMs and posting about SharePoint. If you want to know about SharePoint and you want to kind of take that approach of like, you don't want to dive all the way in yet, you just want to know, what the hell is this SharePoint thing that Therman's always talking about, follow me on LinkedIn. I post about it all the time. And I post about it in a way that's not technical. I talk about how you can apply it to, your work. So just follow me there. Nick, this is good. We absolutely are not done with this topic, but like I said, we're done with this episode. So I'll catch you next time.